Welcome everyone. We're absolutely delighted that you're able to join us tonight for our celebration event of the Great School Libraries campaign. Tonight we will be looking at some of the achievements of the campaign and also launching our Phase 1 report. Although the past few years may not have gone exactly to plan, we are incredibly proud of what the campaign has achieved over the past 3 years. In 2019, we launched the research into this, the level of school library provision in the UK. And this was funded by the Foyle Foundation, and it generated some incredibly important research and data into the state of school libraries, which is still being referred to now. We've secured support from across the educational sector, as well as some really high profile ambassadors. And if you haven't seen some of their comments on the social media boards, they are available on the website for you to download and use in your school libraries. Speaking of, we created a website which highlights the amazing work which is going on every single day in school libraries across the country, and the case studies which illustrate so wonderfully the range and the impact of that work. We've really succeeded in drawing together all those who work in school libraries, and we've commissioned this year further research into some areas of school library work and perceptions around school libraries, which we'll go into more detail in a moment. So tonight there are 3 main sections. The first thing that we're going to do is introduce you to the 2 toolkits which have been developed by the Vice Chairs of the Great School Libraries campaign. The first one looks at health, mental health and wellbeing, and what school libraries can do to support those in their school. The second one is an introduction to inquiry learning, and really shows you how you can build that in and develop that to be a really meaningful learning process. In the second stage of tonight's proceedings, we're going to be introducing the 3 pieces of research which we've commissioned this year. Understanding school leaders' attitudes towards school libraries, the role of school libraries in pupil wellbeing, and understanding the impact of inquiry learning. The third thing we'll do this evening is reflect on the Great School Libraries campaign and answer any questions that you have about anything we've spoken about tonight. Before we do that though, it's my absolute pleasure to hand over to Claire Bowles, who is the Sales and Marketing Director of Peters, who have been such a wonderful sponsor of the campaign. Claire, over to you.
Good evening, and thank you for asking me to say a few words this evening. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Claire Bowles, Sales and Marketing Director at Peters, the UK's leading specialist supplier of children's books and furniture to schools, academies, public libraries and multi-academy trusts. At Peters, we're passionate about inspiring children and young people to read, and believe that all young people should have access to great books and inspiring spaces to enjoy them in. We believe that this will create lifelong readers. We know that research shows that 1 in 11 children on free school meals don't own a single book of their own. We know that children who read for pleasure have better life chances, get better grades, and report higher levels of well-being. Books can feed a child's imagination. It gives them the opportunity to explore new ideas, visit new places and meet new characters. Every child's different, and that is why an engaging and inspiring library full of eye-catching books that include fiction, non-fiction, graphic novels, comics, newspapers, diverse and inclusive books where children can see themselves in a book is so important, as is a reading role model, a librarian or someone enthusiastic about reading for pleasure. There should be something in a library for everybody to enjoy. Libraries are magical places to visit, a place where staff, pupils, and the wider community can come and choose, share, and enjoy a book. Peters are incredibly proud to have been part of the Great School Libraries campaign over the last 3 years. Here at Peters, we believe libraries can change lives. Despite a challenging year, the Great School Libraries campaign has been busy behind the scenes, advocating and promoting the work of school libraries. And tonight, the team are excited to share with you their developments. So I'm delighted to hand over to Elizabeth Hutchinson, who will talk you through the first of the toolkits that we've developed.
I'm delighted to be sharing this new toolkit with you as lead of the Inquiry as an Approach to Learning. When we started this Great School Libraries journey 3 years ago, it was agreed that we wanted to connect with the profession more globally. So it was decided we would use the IFLA School Library Guidelines definition of what a school library is. A school library is a school's physical digital learning space where reading, inquiry, research, thinking, imagination and creativity are central to students' information to knowledge journey and to their personal, social and cultural growth. The inquiry toolkit that has been developed has been focused around fossil. There are other inquiry frameworks out there, so why focus on one? It would be impossible to create a toolkit for all of them and to make it of practical value to you. The reason I chose fossil is for two reasons. Firstly, fossil has been developed in the UK, and secondly, by becoming an expert in fossil, allowed me to share my knowledge and understanding with you all in a way that I hope makes it accessible to you too. However, insight into inquiry gained through fossil will be applicable to any other inquiry framework too. Fossil stands for a framework of skills for inquiry learning. Before I continue, I want to highlight that fossil is one of 5 inquiry frameworks to be recognised in a book about to be published by IFLA, which is the International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions, bringing together 31 contributors from 8 countries. Fossil not only has its own chapter, but there's also a chapter on Stripling's model of inquiry, which fossil is based on, and a practical chapter demonstrating how fossil has been implemented in an A-level subject. It's important to tell you this so that you understand the recognition that fossil has gained worldwide. This is further reflected in the membership of the fossil group, which represents more than 30 countries. This toolkit is the accumulation of many people's work over the years, stretching as far back as the 1980s with Barbara Striplin and the New York City and State, and more recently with Darryl Turian and the Fossil Group, which was launched in April 2019. The ethos of the Fossil Group is to share freely, and as such, all the resources are freely available under a Creative Commons license, which means you can use and adapt them as long as you give it credit. Barbara Striplin and Darryl Turian created content specifically for this toolkit, which will be made available first in the toolkit and also suggests directions in which fossil will continue to develop. As with all things inquiry related, we are only at the beginning of unpacking and understanding the value of an inquiry framework. Inquiry is a journey, and one which we are still on. Our goal is to empower students to become increasingly effective and independent learners, and we believe that an inquiry framework can help us do this. As you can see, there are 6 stages in the fossil cycle: connect, wonder, investigate, construct, express, and reflect. And I want to talk you through the stages in a way that demonstrates how our toolkit came to what you see it is today. Connect. This is the first stage in the inquiry process. And in its simplest terms, what do I already know? Firstly, I was responsible for the inquiry strand of the Great School Libraries campaign. Secondly, I knew the definition of inquiry. Darryl Turian and Barbara Striplin had announced a new working definition of inquiry as a stance, which is a way of thinking and a process. So inquiry is a stance and process aimed at building knowledge and understanding of the world and ourselves in it, which on the basis for responsible participation in community is fundamental to learning both formal and informal. Continuing with what I knew, the next thing was where the journey with inquiry began. As I have already said, fossil, its foundations came from the 1980s and Barbara Striplin and the work that eventually led to the Empire State Information Fluency Continuum, which is based on decades of quality research. This is what I knew, but then I needed to move on to wonder. Wonder is about identifying the questions to guide my investigation. I had many, but I'll narrow it down to the most important ones for you. How does inquiry help support school librarians? How can and should inquiry be part of their vision? How does inquiry change the perception of librarians, their identity and role, or both? How do school librarians perceive themselves, and how are they perceived by their colleagues? What is the library's education and moral purpose? How does this help support leading from the school library? What does working with inquiry mean in practice, and why does it matter to students or school librarians? How do we move forward? Then came a period of investigation to find some of the answers to these questions. I revisited a number of Fossil Group presentations, all of which are freely available on the Fossil Group website, and my investigation led to the heart of what it means for inquiry to enable the library and librarian to achieve its education and moral purpose. And this is what I found. When vision fails, direction is lost. When direction is lost, purpose may be forgotten. When purpose is forgotten, emotional rules alone. When emotional rules alone, destruction. Vision comes from empowering school librarians within something bigger. Many school librarians land in a school with no real understanding of the journey ahead of them, and I include myself in that. How can school librarians have a collective vision if one is not available to them? So to start answering some of these questions, I turned to the IFLA School Library Guidelines. The IFLA guidelines state that the school library is integral to the education process. If the school library is not integral to the education process, then it's peripheral. And if it's peripheral, then it's a step away from being unnecessary. So where do we look for vision, direction, and purpose? Drawing on more than 60 years of international research into creating an inspirational and aspirational school library, the IFLA School Library Guidelines serve to give us direction of this vision, whilst also allowing us to recognise the needs of our own individual countries and schools. A collective vision is far stronger than an individual one. Being clear about who and what we are and why will guide and sustain us in what we do. For this, I went back to the definition, which establishes three things. 1, the library is a learning space. 2, in which and through the instructional activities of the library staff. And 3, serve the purpose of the students' information to knowledge journey and their personal and social and cultural growth. Which brought me back to my question, what is the library's education and moral purpose? The school library's explicit twofold purpose is the school library exists to serve its educational purpose, improving teaching and learning for all, and its moral purpose, making a difference to the lives of young people. I was fascinated to read on page 18 of the IFLA guidelines, something that I now believe led to the creation of the toolkit, which we are sharing with you today. Without the tools to give our schools a planned comprehensive offering of teaching and learning activities, school librarians are not able to accomplish their educational purpose. But what does the guideline suggest the school librarians teach? Surely not just inquiry. As you can see, absolutely not. We have literacy and reading promotion right at the top. But it states that there are 4 other core activities that the school librarian should be involved in. One of my ongoing questions was, how could a school librarian start to engage with this? This led to focus on the third one down, inquiry-based learning and Fossil. As the Fossil group had started to grow, I was able to gain more knowledge and understanding from them, leaving me to feel confident in being able to move forward to the construct stage. Construct is not about putting the toolkit together, as many of you may think. Construct is about pulling together my new understanding and connecting it to my previous knowledge, helping me to draw conclusions about my questions in the wonder stage. What I realised was the toolkit, which would be produced in the express stage, would need several components to be useful. It would be important to explain why we were focusing on inquiry, what it means, and how it links with information literacy. This toolkit would need to be carefully explained, the different stages of the cycle, and include areas for consideration at each stage. In order to help school librarians understand how these stages work, it would be important to include an example of an inquiry in very practical terms. And finally, highlighting how everything in a school library is linked to inquiry, from the space and the resources to the instructional programme and policies. All that was left was to put it together and then reflect on the process. The toolkit is the product and the outcome of this inquiry process. So the question here is how each of us will apply it. It will necessarily be different for each of us, but lead school librarians forward in a positive way. Using this toolkit, we are constructing a shared vocabulary around inquiry, which is vital. As Deborah Levitoff warns, standardisation of inquiry language is an important step if all educators are to share a common understanding, and without which effective collaboration between librarians and teachers is simply not possible. Once there is a confidence in understanding how to use FOSTL through the toolkit, I'm confident school librarians and teachers will find opportunities to use it. Our contexts are unique, as are we, but in using the same toolkit, we become part of a collaborative effort to make the school library integral to the education process through inquiry. We are united in our approach, which must surely give strength to our voice. Ultimately, when creating this toolkit, we understand that some school librarians will contribute more than others. Each of you is on your own journey, and however you use this toolkit enriches all of us. We give it to you in the spirit of helping each other, and in turn, you are helping your teachers, who in turn are helping their students, which leads us finally to reflect. All good inquiries end with a reflection of the process and the outcome, as well as the realisation that there is more. In creating this toolkit, our final reflection was no different. Where has it brought us? How has our context changed? What have we come to know? Are we starting again? And where does this take us now? As I was given the responsibility for the inquiry learning strand, which led to the creation of the toolkit, I feel it speaks for itself. For many reasons touched on here and documented elsewhere, the model we chose to focus on was FOSTL. Now take it and make it your own. Thank you for listening.
I have been a school librarian for over 30 years and have seen firsthand the role that libraries play within schools, the value and benefits they bring to a school community. They support reading, learning to read, reading for pleasure, reading for information. They support teaching and learning by providing curated, reliable resources, by delivering programs of digital, media and information literacy skills, and by fostering an environment of exploration and discovery. And they have a pastoral role. This is hard to measure, often not recognised or acknowledged, but is vitally important. It has been said that a public library is the only place in a community where a person is not a consumer. In a school, the library is the place that is not connected with exams, grades, or targets. Yes, schools provide opportunities for sport, music, drama, and other creative arts, but these are all linked to an end result, such as winning a game or performing a play. In a school library, you can sit quietly, recharge, lose yourself in a book, explore a topic or idea that interests you without having an end goal. It is a place of dreams and refuge where you can just be. The toolkit presented this evening deals with three aspects: health, mental health, and well-being. These areas are crucially important to ensure young people flourish and are able to cope with the many challenges they will meet in their lives. Good mental health and well-being in particular are central to developing social and emotional skills. The toolkit describes what is meant by health, mental health and well-being, what causes the problems experienced by children and young people, and details additional factors that make some of them more at risk than others. It explains how the school library and librarian can support students and offers links to a range of online websites and organisations for resources and further information. The aim of the toolkit, by pulling information and links together in one place, is to help librarians in their pastoral role. It's also a resource for other school staff and people working with children and young adults, and we hope that it will be shared with colleagues, parents, and anyone that might find it useful. Health literacy is a growing concern. According to Health Education England, 43% of adults do not understand written health information, and this has an impact on their recovery and long-term outlook, as well as financial consequences, both for the individual and the UK's annual health budget. Good health includes physical, mental, and social well-being. It is not merely the absence of disease. And the adolescent years are an ideal time to embed good health knowledge and practices with curated, reliable resources and the skills needed to understand and recognise trusted medical advice. Mental health and well-being are also a growing concern. The NHS, the Mental Health Foundation, the Children's Society, and Young Minds all produce reports that reflect troubling statistics, as do other charities. In 2019, 12.8% of 5 to 19-year-olds had at least one mental health disorder. This figure has increased from 11.2% in 2017. 20% of adolescents will have a mental health problem in any given year. Nearly half of all mental health problems will manifest by the age of 14 years. But 75% of young people with a mental health problem are not getting the help they need. This is resulting in behaviour issues, with many of them dropping out of school or becoming suicidal. Suicide is currently the biggest killer of young people in the UK aged 20 to 34 years. Poor mental health amongst students was increasing before the pandemic. Studies show it has worsened since. Any adult who has suffered from poor mental health knows the impact it has on their life. Children and young people do not have the strategies and resilience of adults. Supporting the mental health and well-being of students should be a top priority, and the school library can play a part in this. There are many reasons for this increase in poor mental health. The education system focuses on tests and exams. From the time children enter the early years at age 5 until they leave education age 18, they are continually tested. Social media has created a fear of missing out so that young people are constantly checking their phones and spending excessive time online. Unhealthy body image aspirations promoted by the media are putting pressure on young people to look perfect. Social media also means they are constantly comparing themselves against other people's online lives and finding theirs lacking. The rise in fake news and misinformation means students are no longer sure of what to believe or trust in. And bullying, racism, and discrimination also have an impact on mental health and well-being. All these create stress and anxiety. When this is continual, it can lead to mental health issues. School librarians are not mental health experts. They should not be used to replace trained practitioners, but because of their exposure to students and the unique environment of the library, they can provide help and support. They are able to work in collaboration with the pastoral team, tutors, PSHE teachers, creating a holistic approach and passing concerns on to relevant staff. They can provide resources within the library, as well as signposting to online resources and further assistance, pointing students in the direction of helplines and support groups. The school library is a culturally safe space where students can see themselves reflected in books and displays. The librarian has a very different role from that of a teacher. They are able to provide time and space to engage with students. They are also able to run activities, book groups, craft sessions, mindfulness activities, board games, things that help students to recharge and relax. Science has demonstrated that reading reduces stress levels, and where better a place to read than in the library. Research also shows that library usage increases well-being. I want to leave you with a personal story. I had a student, I'll call him Michael, who was one of my team of student librarians. He was pleasant, fairly quiet, one of those students that often bypass the radar. He didn't cause any problems, but wasn't captain of the football team or had a huge crowd of friends around him all the time. I think most of us will recognise students like this. We all have them in our schools. After he left, I met his mother in town. She said she wanted to thank me, explaining that Michael had struggled at school and the library was the only place where he could be himself, and that she was so grateful he had this space. Now, I had no idea about this because in the library, he was a happy student. He would chat to me all the time about all sorts of things. And this has stuck with me because it made me realise that sometimes the impact we have as a school librarian is unknown even to us. If a school does not have a library, ask yourself, where do those students go who are struggling? What about those who are overwhelmed by the busyness of break times or are being bullied and just need to be somewhere there's an adult? Who provides the resources and support they need? Information that's easily accessible without them having to ask for it. Where is their safe space where they can just be? I hope that the evidence presented here, together with this toolkit and the case studies on the Great School Libraries website, will convince people, especially the decision makers, of the need for a school library and librarian to support the health and well-being of students. Thank you.
We are moving on. Our mission is to tell you our phase 1 achievements, as I mentioned earlier, which is we did vital research into the state of school library provision for school-aged children in Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And this was funded by the Foyle Foundation, the report, and being able to get it out to you all, and it highlighted the inequality of access to school libraries and the insecure employment of a lot of us, and this was pre-pandemic as well. We've had support from across the education sector, as well as high-profile ambassadors, including Cressida Cowell, Chris Riddell and Jackie Morris, and we've commissioned research into school libraries. We've created a beautiful website which highlights the work of school library staff, and we've drawn together school library workers through social media, and our monthly chats, which Elizabeth Hutchinson has been running for us. So tonight we have introduced the 2 toolkits to support school library staff and teachers. We are also going to introduce 3 pieces of research which we commissioned with so the sponsorship that Peters has given us. Claire helped us source this. We went to universities and we commissioned, these are students who've looked at the literature and done reports for us, and you will get copies of those reports. So understanding school leaders' attitudes towards school libraries, very interesting piece of research. The role of school libraries in pupil well-being and understanding the impact of inquiry learning. So there's 3 that you will get. So sorry, we've done the introduction. Media highlights. We have actually had quite a bit of media chatter around in the 3 years, and as you can see, there was a couple of news round on the day that the report was launched, and Cressida Cowell and several other places. And so the first piece of research was understanding school leaders' attitudes towards school libraries. So the highlights, I've just pulled this off the beginnings of their reports. School senior managers do not always understand the positive impact of school libraries. And I think we would all agree with that. School leaders have had a traditional view of library provision, with the most important function in their view is being lending books, running reading groups, and providing quiet study areas. School leaders' perception was that school library use was linked to school achievement, so that's a good step forward and a good talking point for you with your school leaders. Unfortunately, school library spaces were seen as expendable when school space was put under pressure, especially recently. There's more work to be done in promoting the full breadth of activity in the library and the importance of protecting the space for pupils, and more work is needed in evaluating how these activities contribute to pupil attainment and well-being. So it's a really interesting report, and I do recommend it to you. Our second report the role of school libraries in pupil wellbeing, it dovetails nicely into Barbara's work. And this was conducted by Lauren James at Nottingham Trent University. Wellbeing is positively associated with regular library usage for all age groups. Disadvantaged children use the library more than their peers. Children do not often see themselves represented in library resources and do not see it as a culturally safe space. So that's one that we really have to do a lot more work on. There's a positive correlation between having good provision in the library and pupil engagement. So that's a good argument for you when you're going in for your next budget talks. Interviews with school librarians found that they felt that the library provides a safe and welcoming space for pupils. However, librarians held mixed views on whether pastoral support should be seen as part of their role. Librarians can and do offer discreet ways of allowing pupils to select sensitive resources without adult intervention or supervision. These included self-checkout for students or e-resources. And funding for library provision limits the ability of librarians to provide the support needed by pupils. Again, a lot of good research in that. Our third piece, understanding the impact of inquiry learning, it's a shorter review because there's only a small amount of literature as yet. As Elizabeth has said, this is new in the UK, so there wasn't as many written reports and literature around this subject. So we will continue to commission this and come back to it because, like I said, we have paid for this research and we will come back to it. However, these are the highlights from, the highlights from what we have seen. Since 1990, creativity scores have decreased by a large margin, even if IQ scores have increased, which is very interesting fact. Existing models of education are not optimal at teaching pupils to deal with contemporary problems. Intrinsic motivation likely leads to increased interest, enjoyment, self-regulation, well-being, and to better academic outcomes. And Chu 2009 compared students who had experienced IBL to a control group of students who did not, and their findings showed higher grades in the IBL group, regardless of academic abilities. So Peters took us on road shows during the 3 years before everything was shut down, and here you can see the wonderful Chris Riddell in one of the Peters road shows. I'm really sorry that obviously COVID put a stop to that before I had a chance to go to one of the road shows, but I know that Alison Tarrant enjoyed them. And we want to thank our partners tonight. As you can see, CILIP Cymru, CILIP Ireland, SLG Scotland. I want to thank the School Libraries Group Committee for supporting me, and I know Alison wants to thank the board and supporters of the School Library Association for supporting her as well. Youth Libraries Group, Reading Agency, National Literacy Trust and Book Trust. We have worked with all of these people. I don't see, we did have members of the SLS UK on as well on our board. So we've worked really with a range of partners and a range of voices. So what can you do next? We'd like you to read through the research and to pass it on to senior leaders. Not necessarily the whole report, depends on your senior leaders, depending, but certainly apply the research to your library, have a think about it, how you could implement it, and perhaps pass that on, get it put in your next review. That'd be one way of implementing what you see. And pass the toolkits to others not here today and get them to sign up to the newsletter. The toolkits will be available on the website after, obviously, they're available to you because you have them for being here tonight. And keep an eye out for news about phase 2. We're not discussing that tonight. This is about phase 1. We'll be very excited next year to introduce you to phase 2. You will love it. And finally, you can get in touch with the campaign chairs. Myself and Alison are being co-chairs for phase 2. For phase 1, it started with Alison for the first half and me now for the second half, and we have agreed to co-chair going into the future. Alison and I have both got different strengths, and we are going to play to our own strengths. And you will see at the bottom there, this will be available afterwards, as will the other PowerPoints. But there is an address there for you to, if you want to email both of us, rather than us individually at our organisations, could you use that? And then Alison and I will both be able to see the emails and get in touch with you. So thank you very much for listening to me. Now we had some questions emailed in, and we will also have at the end, Claire Peters they have a special prize that they will be awarding one lucky person who has attended in person tonight. So I will look up the other couple of questions that was emailed in beforehand, but we will start with questions tonight. You can either ask them in the chat box now, or you can, if you're feeling brave, put your camera on and unmute yourself and ask Barbara, myself, Claire and Elizabeth, or whatever questions you like. Over to you.
Do try and read the reports. They're absolutely full of amazing information that you can use to argue your case for all sorts of things to do with libraries.
Definitely.
Where can we find the toolkits again? Have they been sent out to everybody?
Everyone who has been here tonight, you will get an email tomorrow with the toolkits there. And we said we would give it to you before everyone else, and we will do. You will get to see them first.
Somebody said about reports and toolkits applying to primary settings. Well, I know my toolkit, it definitely applies to primary schools, because when you look at the organisations that I've linked to, because my toolkit, as well as being the toolkit you can read, there's a link to an online resource, isn't there, Caroline, with all the organisations and links and everything I put in it, which is more used to you online, because then you can just click on the hyperlink. Now, those organisations support the children and young people. If you think about the statistics I quoted, it was from the age of 5 upwards, and sadly, issues to do with mental health and poor well-being are now being seen in younger and younger children. So this isn't just a problem that's unique to the secondary school arena, or adolescents or teenagers or young adults. Children are being impacted and are beginning to have poor mental health and well-being. And so the role a library can play in a primary school is to support children in their good mental health, is the same as a secondary school library. You can still do those activities, you still have those resources, albeit at primary level as opposed to secondary level. I'm not sure that about Caroline will be able to answer this, but to do the research, or maybe she'll be able to answer this, when they did the research, if they looked at primary schools as well as secondary, and I know it's a different thing with inquiry learning in primary schools, isn't it, Elizabeth?
Yeah, so Fossil does go through from reception all the way through to year 8 to year 13. So the toolkit, the example is an A level, but equally it's if you go and look at the Fossil Group website, you can see examples of primary schools using Fossil as well as secondary.
But I think primary schools tend not to deliver those skills so much, do they? I think they're so focused on literacy. And if you look at the literacy levels of children at age 11, I think it's something like 25%. The last time I looked, it was something like 25% of 11-year-olds have a literacy level lower than is expected of them. So you can understand why, in a way, why primary schools focus on the literacy, focus on the reading.
There's some lovely, they have more time to do inquiry though as well. So, there's some great examples of primary schools that are doing inquiry learning as well, which is
they're ideally situated because they do project.
Yes, exactly.
Learning project-based in primary schools. And everything's delivered through a project. So they'll do, Egyptians, it won't just be history, they'll cover geography and all sorts of other subjects as well. So they are ideally placed to deliver that inquiry approach to learning. But I'm not sure, not as many do as they should, or I would hope so.
Kevin Sheenan has asked if there are any case studies in the toolkit. So I'll just say that not as far as I'm aware, but there's lots of case studies on the website.
Yeah, I didn't put any in because they're available. I didn't see much point in repeating repeating what you can read on the website.
Absolutely.
Really.
Yeah, I hope you have all had a chance to look at the website, and if you haven't, there are studies on just about every aspect, including stuff that's applicable to primary schools. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Francis Trimming has asked, are there any case studies of primary schools using Fossil as a class-based topic research lesson? There are a couple of examples on the Fossil Group website that I know of, and I'm sure, I think Daryl is actually on
Daryl's on here.
Today, so he may very well answer that in more detail in the chat, I'm sure.
Yeah, somebody said about encouraging students to read non-fiction. Yeah, I think. I love non-fiction books. In fact, if I'm going to buy books, it's usually non-fiction because I read my fiction books and pass them on. But I covet my non-fiction books, But I've worked in schools where, lesson comes into the library with an English teacher and they won't let them read non-fiction. They insist on them reading a novel, which is a bit naughty, really. So I used to sneak what they wanted onto the table. So non-fiction definitely needs more promoting, I think. But it's good if you've got support for this. Yeah.
One of the questions that was sent in beforehand, so not in the chat box, is that are there any qualifications that Great School Libraries can recommend for staff working in school libraries? So our answer is yes. There's, apart from chartership, there's lots of other training and that is recommended. Both the SLA, who's got quite a large collection of online training. If you go on their website, you can do this training at your own pace. And SLG, we put on day webinars. So Watch Our Space, we work slightly differently than that. There are diplomas available, although they aren't necessarily school library specific. You can do masters as well if that's what you want to do. There is a lot of training. So it's really difficult to talk in general terms. If you go on SLG website, we have got a link to short key issues that we've written about the types of training there is, but we're very happy if you want to contact us directly and explain what your own situation is and what you need training on. We will be more than happy, both Alison and I, to point you in the right direction. Okay, so that's that question.
Somebody has asked about is the role of the librarian in both of these aspects being promoted to head teachers by the campaign to begin to educate teachers on the role of the librarian?
What I will say to that is watch this space for stage 2.
Yeah.
Stage 1, that we're not going to leak anything about stage 2, although I know that Elizabeth and Barbara and Claire all know. But today's about stage 1. So stage 1 was about establishing how many, or as far as we could, how many schools had libraries and what type of schools they were, and what type of libraries and the sort of salaries that you all paid. So all of that was what stage 1 of the campaign was about, and we have done that as far as we are able. And the second part was on doing these toolkits while we were all locked in. But this is what we were working on when we couldn't go and see education minister, couldn't see anybody. We worked on this just to underpin your knowledge. And now stage 2, we will make a big jump up from this again, which do watch out. It'll be the beginning of next year that we plan to launch, sometime probably endish January, beginning of February. We will launch phase 2, so do watch out, and we will let you know probably in another webinar like this.
Yeah. But also, if you look at the our supporters, if you look on the Great School Library website, the people that are giving us quotes that are supporting the campaign, a lot of those are educationalists, aren't they? We've got Jeff Barton, we've got people who are supporting the campaign who have a wide reach, not just librarians, but a much wider reach within the education profession. So they are spreading the word for us. But if anybody's been involved in anything like this, you'll know it's quite a slow process. It's just basically chipping away and building those relationships, so eventually get to a tipping point, hopefully. Then we've had Teresa Kremin, obviously from the Open University, who's extremely influential, and also the Cressida Cowles campaign. Well, it was born out of our research and our toolkits, and she got impassioned about what there was available and what there wasn't available. Not available,
Yes. And as you know, she got the ear of the government. So we might have not have spoken directly, but our work has spoken volumes. And I know also that various people have asked for and looked at various toolkits. We've been asking what school librarians have been doing during lockdown then. And the reason we have quite a good reputation is because we could point to the toolkits and say, this. And the
case studies. The case studies of
the case studies. Sorry, I meant the case studies. And people said, yes, all the lockdown case studies have really helped build the fact that we pivoted on digital faster than most other people. We were instantly straight into online book clubs then. Can't do a real one? We'll do this.
And also what has happened in quite a lot of schools is that the impact librarians had with online learning, straight to these are the resources you need, putting together wakelets with the curated resource and things, has made teachers and senior leaders in the school realise the wider work of the librarian. When we don't sit at the desk issuing books all day, and so this has carried on once schools have gone back, and they pulled the librarian into more of the role within the curriculum within the school, which has been brilliant. It's ironic that it's taken a sort of lockdown and online learning for people to realise in a way. But somebody said about manga. I don't know. I don't like manga personally, although I love graphic novels, but it's actually quite hard to read manga. It's not babyish at all. It requires a lot of skills to read manga, because you've got, apart from being sort of back to front, you've got to have that visual literacy as well as understanding it. Maybe your teacher needs to try and read a manga book, and then they'll realise it's not babyish at all.
And I I openly say to my students, I don't read this, but you do. So you tell me, and I give them responsibility. It can't have this in and it can't have that in. And they love it. So I've had all sorts of great recommendations. And I'm not afraid to tell them it's not my thing. I don't read it, but you do. So you tell me.
It's interesting. Somebody says about they had a conversation with Deputy Head about manga and graphic novels, and after giving lots of tales about reluctant readers, because they are definitely one to pull them in, and he shut up when he saw the Dickens graphic novels. I think he was a year 10 student, and he was he wasn't just a reluctant reader, he was a CND student. He struggled with reading, and he came in to look for Macbeth on the shelf and found the graphic novel, went off, and when he came back he got really excited. He said, I didn't know they wrote books like this about Shakespeare. And it was brilliant because he could understand the story then, and then he sort of got so much more out of his lessons. So I don't think people realise that graphic novels they're not all Marvel characters or DC. This is the problem. They've got this image in their head, haven't they, that it's all Iron Man and Spider-Man and stuff, and it's actually they're much wider than that. So,
yeah.
Right, can we honestly say, hand to heart, that decision makers are reading and listening to the campaign?
No, is the easy answer. No, of course we can't. But we keep trying, because not to try means we've given up, and I'm not giving up. I'm not giving up on this. So yes, we will move on to phase 2, and we
I think Nick Paul, who's CEO, he does when you get these adverts that come up at appalling salaries and ridiculous job descriptions, he contacts the schools, and he has had some success with convincing heads that they need, if they're going to have a decent library for their students, they need to employ an experienced librarian and pay them a salary commensurate with the responsibilities of the role.
And Nick is always shouting about school libraries on Twitter and things. You'll find he's passionately committed, and that's why he initiated this campaign. We've only been going 3 years. So we weren't going to.
And one of the problems we do have is the education secretary changes. So it's almost like a step backwards. I mean, even before all of this, I was organised that lobby and everything, and I can remember at the lobby to Parliament meeting an education secretary, and by the time the report, The Beating Heart of the School, was published, we presented it to a different education secretary. So, and in between that, I've got a feeling I met another one. I actually went to tea in Hazard's Park with one of them. So it wasn't a very exciting tea, I have to say. But, so you've got a different every few years, if you're lucky, a different education secretary.
And we had an election as well, didn't we? Yeah. So we were about to speak to one, and then Boris got elected, and then we went into lockdown almost straight afterwards. So we haven't had a lot of luck. Not a lot of luck at the top, but we are determined. All of us are passionately committed. And thank you for that comment about what this campaign is doing for me. Has given me the tools to share valuable information with SMT.
Can't keep up with messages. I've got 21.
I know.
Messages now.
So thank you, Helen. Yes, that's what we're trying to give you, the tools to advocate for yourself, because we can't advocate individually for all of you, but we are giving you, and these research reports, when you read them, they will give you tools to speak to your SMT about different things. We are actually
that's brilliant,
over time.
Oh, we are. That's true.
So, Claire, I don't know how you want to either you want to award a winner now from the 76 participants we've got on here right now, or is that how you're doing it? You're doing it from people who are actually live on the
we were going to
show tonight.
Yeah, we were going to pick, I thought we'd pick a couple of winners. The plan is that Peters will send £100 worth of book goodies out to 2 lucky winners. So I've just picked a couple of people at complete random.
And everyone's hating on
the
you.
list that are here. Claire Moore and Francis Trimming. If you want to drop me a message and just let me have some contact details for you and whether you're primary or secondary, and then we will get some book goodies out in the post to you tomorrow. So yeah, thank you for joining.
Wow. I hope there's cheering in the background there. So we'll give you a couple of minutes just to drop your addresses in the chat box, and perhaps we'll have one more question or comment while you're doing that. Oh, do we have plans to work school library service in the future? We have done for 3 years. When the campaign started, Elizabeth was a SLS herself, so she provided the support. And then when Elizabeth retired or changed into independent consultant, then we have Nina Simone from SLS UK has been providing us the support. So we've worked with SLS before. I don't see any reason why we should suddenly stop working with SLS. They're valuable partners. Well, like I said, it's been a great evening. It's been really exciting 3 years. Even though we've sort of snaked off in a different direction, we've done a lot of work in the 3 years, and we are really pleased and proud of all that we've done. So, and again, Peters, Claire, you've been amazing, even right to the end now, offering prizes. Thank you so much. You've helped.
No, thank you for allowing us to be part of it.
Oh, we enjoyed it. Okay, so look out for stage 2. You will not believe what we're doing. You will love it. But everyone, keep advocating, keep going. Last week or couple of weeks for some unfortunate people off term. And yes, keep shouting about great school libraries.
Share the toolkit and the report.
Share the toolkits.
That's the message.
Yeah.
Thank you everybody for coming. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.